Welcome to the Library Research Award at American University. I am G. Davis, and I am your university librarian. Today, we are here to celebrate the incredible research achievements of our talented students. Research is a cornerstone of higher education. It challenges our students to delve into original work, pushing the boundary of knowledge in their fields. By analyzing and crafting well-supported conclusions, they sharpen their critical thinking skills in remarkable ways. Our award winners didn't do this alone. They have collaborated with our esteemed faculty members across various disciplines, and I'm thrilled to see many of them are attending today. So thank you for joining us today. A warm welcome also goes out to the family members of our students. Your support is invaluable, so thank you for joining us today. I want to commend all our students, winners, of their unwavering dedication to research. Your hard work truly reflects the excellence we strive for at American University. So you all make us proud. Today, we will be celebrating winners in 3 categories: Best Writing Studies Papers, Best Undergraduate Papers, and the W. Donald Ball Award for Exceptional Research on Wealth, Inequality, and Related Topics. Congratulations to all our winners. I look forward to engaging with you after the ceremony. And now, let's hear from our chair of the Best Writing Studies Paper Selection Committee, Clarissa Eason.
Hi. Oh, advance the slide. That's what she's saying. 2 more. 1, 2. Okay. There we go. That makes sense. The committee was amazed when we learned that this was a first semester college writing research paper. Eleanor Regal's paper is an accomplished academic essay that is solidly researched and includes polished writing. The paper's use of data and graphics added to the discussions on polarization on campus. For their clear writing, organization, and research, the committee is excited to award Eleanor Regal with the 3rd place prize for Best Writing Studies paper. Yes. I thought you said she gives the They're in order. Okay.
Sorry.
I thought you were giving it.
Okay. See, I thought you were going to do the presentation. So here you go. Here you go. Thank you so much for
Now we know.
Thank you. Can I share? And then we can take the picture. Good. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. Hello, everyone. All right. There we go. Hello, everyone. I wanted to say thank you so much for being here, and thank you to the library and the Writing Studies team for recognizing my paper, and thank you as well to Kate Wilson, my professor, for recommending that I, look into this award and, for recommending me. The prompt for the essay that I wrote was to find trouble in the world around me and really dig in and investigate. It was first assigned to my class in late October of last year, right after the struggle to elect a new speaker in the House of Representatives, following Kevin McCarthy's removal. When thinking about my essay topic, I thought back to discussions I had heard in the news about the potential of bipartisan support for a moderate speaker candidate, and how much the idea was treated as impossible because it wasn't clear who would be moderate enough to warrant bipartisan support, or if anyone would support that moderate candidate. The trouble I decided to look into for my essay was the intense polarization that we see in Congress today, and the factors that have contributed to it. I looked at the speakership race and asked myself how we got to the point where there wasn't a candidate moderate enough to support both sides, and to the point where no one would vote for that person anyway. When I was starting my research, I learned a lot about what resources the library had to offer at a presentation by library staff to my class. Specifically, what helped me the most was learning how best to utilize the advanced search bar and to have access to politically focused research journals. This is my first semester. I was going into my first semester, so I really didn't know much about academic research, and the library staff was really kind and helpful in that way. They helped connect me with past research articles on factors like gerrymandering, incumbent advantage, and ostracization of third-party candidates that I found to have impact on the current makeup of Congress. Without the library, I would not have had access to many of the investigative tools that I used as I combed through study guides to find research and to find articles that I mentioned earlier. In the end, my research helped me identify a cycle of re-election and safe seats that parties create, which has created the hyperpartisanship in Congress as we see it today. This is an environment where history tells us we will have party splintering, as I mentioned in the conclusion of my essay. We can see this today in the generational divide in the Democratic Party over the handling of the war in Gaza, and in the Republican Party between moderates and extremists like those in the Freedom Caucus. I am so glad to have learned so much about those library resources in my first semester and look forward to putting them to use in my future classes throughout the rest of my time at American. It's only my first year, and I look forward to seeing, learning from my upperclassmen and seeing the amazing research that they've been able to do, and really take inspiration from that and see how far I'm able to go as well. I know that the library will be an invaluable resource going forward. Thank you.
Yes. Well, I know. Great. The committee was moved by the specificity of this research paper topic and our author's call to action. Lila Barron's paper is personal, and the policy viewpoint about gun violence allowed her to begin joining the scholarly conversation. This paper also uses various resources which show the depth of their research process. For their deeply moving call to action, the committee is pleased to award Lila Barron with the second place prize for Best Writing Studies paper.
Congratulations, Lila. Great job. Thank you. It's so weird, like everybody's sitting and then we're gonna smile. Awkward, but.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Lila Barron. I'm a first-year student studying CLEG, and I'm in the PPL program. My research project is called Thoughts and Prayers Are Not Enough, a comprehensive guide to reducing gun violence in Michigan, my home state. I'll go through why I picked my topic, how I researched it, and what my research showed. So, if you know me well, you probably know that my worst fear is school shootings. On Monday, February 13th, 2023, at 8:18 p.m., my worst nightmare came true. My big sister was hiding behind the exercise equipment in the IM building at Michigan State. Ellie is my fearless protector. She is the one who's always looked out for me, but I couldn't look out for her in that moment. I was absolutely helpless, and I had no idea if I would see her again. Thankfully, she came out of it safe, but 8 of her classmates did not. From that moment on, I knew that I had found my passion. When researching, I utilized the library's databases largely by connecting them to Google Scholar, which allowed me to efficiently search through all of the library's resources at once. I used 24 different sources in my research, including local and national news sources, peer-reviewed sources, gun safety resources, and government sources. My thesis for my research was that gun violence is a national crisis, and Michigan should do its part in mitigating it by enacting a comprehensive set of gun control policies. So I'll now go through some of the solutions I found in my research. The first solution I'll talk about is cultivating a safe school environment, one where people feel able to report their concerns and have them taken seriously. This could have prevented the Oxford shooting, where 4 people died and 7 people were injured. Another solution that is a bit less talked about is community violence intervention programs. This includes cleaning up neighborhoods and implementing community-based building programs. This is something that's so simple, but it's actually shown some relatively significant results. For example, by cleaning up vacant lots in Philadelphia neighborhoods below the poverty line, crime and gun assaults dropped by 13.3% and 29.1% respectively over 3 years. Also, behavioral restrictions like gun control based on alcohol-related or domestic violence convictions could significantly reduce gun violence, given that people with these convictions are more likely to commit acts of gun violence. One staggering statistic I found is that in at least 46% of mass shootings, the perpetrator shot a current or former intimate partner or family member. If we limited these people's access to guns, we could absolutely reduce mass shootings. Universal background checks, a solution which most of us have heard of, could significantly reduce the number of guns that are put into the hands of dangerous people. For example, after implementing universal background checks, Connecticut saw a 40% decrease in homicides by gun. Even more, extreme risk protection orders, also known as ERPOs or red flag laws, allow a police officer, family member, or school authority to remove guns from the possession of people who they have reason to believe is a danger to themselves or others. This is super important because even if people report their concerns, the authorities need a legal mechanism to actually do something about them. Regulating the ability of people to obtain semi-automatic weapons without background checks and closing the gun shoe loophole would reduce the availability of dangerous weapons to people between 18 and 21. Right now, the federal minimum age for purchasing a semi-automatic weapon from a licensed salesperson is 21, but there is no federal minimum age that regulates who can purchase from an unlicensed salesperson. So legally, any person between 18 and 21 can obtain a semi-automatic weapon. Closing this hole could have prevented the Oxford shooting, or the Parkland shooting, rather, in which 17 people died and 17 people were injured. Implementing firearm storage laws can also help with gun safety. Households that lock both firearms and ammunition are associated with a 78% lower risk of self-inflicted firearm injuries and an 85% lower risk of unintentional firearm injuries among children and teenagers than those that locked neither. If the Crumbley's gun was stored safely, Ethan would not have been able to bring it to school to use in the Oxford shooting. Finally, banning assault weapons, a solution that is proposed time and time again, could truly be one of the most effective ways to reduce the severity and frequency of mass shootings. Shootings with automatic weapons result in an average of 2.3 times more people killed and 22.7 times more people wounded. In the Uvalde Elementary School shooting, where 21 people were killed and 17 people were injured, many of the victims killed by the AR-15 used were unidentifiable without a DNA test. Not even their own parents could recognize them. I'll leave you with that to think about. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much to the library for awarding my research.
Okay. The last award. The committee was most impressed by the ambition of our first award winner. Luis Perez used a vast array of resources that span disciplines and complexities to write an incredible paper about 2 different owl species. The paper topic grew organically out of a background interest and developed into a reflective argument with a meaningful message. For their engaging, ambitious paper, the committee is pleased to award Luis Perez with the first place prize for Best Writing Studies paper.
First, I want to thank everyone to come out during the busy time, and Professor Wilson for encouraging me to apply and writing my recommendation letter. Also want to thank you again for introducing me to a lot of authors that really made me consider a lot of things about environmentalism. So first, my assignment was to choose a species and explore what happens if it went extinct. I am usually a very indecisive person, but I knew I wanted to shed light on a species that hides in the dark and a species that is often misunderstood, so I chose the owl. Although I did answer the prompt, I fell into a research rabbit hole, discovering a history of ethical conflicts, government scandals, and exploring philosophical ideas like the human instinct to control their environment. What really pulled me out of this rabbit hole and made my ideas semi-coherent and digestible was my library research resources. Professor Wilson dedicated an entire class to learn these resources when I was a freshman, and it really helped me to access a lot of databases and scientific journals and learning the basics of bioethics. So my paper is a philosophical and scientific lens, but it's really a simple story about the northern spotted owl. They have a symbiotic relationship with the old-growth trees, and they need them to survive. A tree to be considered old growth needs to be at least 120 years old. Since 1990, the land has been protected, but in small fragments to compromise with the logging industry. This conflict between the 70s and 80s was called the Timber Wars. But another bigger part of the story is the second conflict, which is their invasive species, the barred owl. They are more able to adapt. They're bigger, stronger, and they're the biggest threat to the extinction according to the federal government. So the solution for the last 20 years has been a government experiment which calls for lethal conservation, meaning hunting down thousands of barred owls to slow down the extinction of northern spotted owls. The results show it did work. I'm not here to contest the results, but I could contest them. But there are many ethical issues I want to explore. One of them is the Fish and Wildlife Services, who acknowledged how we got here, which was humanity causing the barred owl to move west, constantly removing their homes. The newest proposal, just 6 months ago, calls for an expansion of this lethal removal for the next 30 years to kill 500,000 barred owls. The hunters and scientists hired for this experiment were all saddened, but they all had one thing in common. They said, this is the only way to save them. We have no other choice, and this is the last resort. If we assume they are right, we can't ignore the fact that nothing really exists in a vacuum. This wasn't always the only choice. There were decisions made prior that led us here, which I examined with the Timber Wars. But the core of my criticism could be summarized in this one quote by Elizabeth Colbert. She says, "Human ingenuity can outrun any disaster human ingenuity sets in motion." The owl experiment doesn't really try to amend past failures. It does just provide a new way to ignore them and move forward. Physically, it doesn't seem like we have much in common with owls, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't take a closer look at the owl experience in North America. The story I go into in my 12-page paper involves the story of two owls and scapegoating a certain population when things get worse, victimization from colonization and capitalism, suffering from unjust policies, victims of unethical government experiments, and being unseen and unheard. This all sounds familiar because it's something we all experience. If there's one message I want to give with my research paper, it's that this is not just an owl story, it's a human story. And it's the most human story anyone could ever hear. I hope everyone in this room, when they think about their relationship with the natural world, sees for themselves that we live in separate worlds, but we are not so different. And we don't need to rely on sacrificing one species to save another for future conservation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. It is my great pleasure to present the Undergraduate Paper Research Awards, starting with our third place winner, Madison Brown. Madison demonstrated a mastery of source evaluation in her project. The committee noticed how carefully she curated her sources, going beyond just describing them to really analyzing how they supported her research. Another thing that stood out for us is the range of sources that Madison used, from traditional sources like books and articles to a variety of social media sources. She developed her information literacy lens to decide what to include and did a great job of both describing and justifying her research design choices. I'd like to call Madison up to receive your award. Third place, undergraduate research.
Hi, I'm Madison, so I'm a senior political science student here. This was actually my capstone project, and before I talk a little bit about it, I'd like to thank not only our librarians here, who are amazing, and the resource opportunities that they provide here, as well as my faculty mentors, Dr. Kimberly Cowell-Myers and Dr. Brian Hughes, and every family member and friend who was forced to listen to me ramble about this topic this past semester. Within my project, I knew I wanted to focus on AI and algorithmic targeting of youth demographics, specifically on a social media platform that has had very little research done so far, Instagram, because it's what I spend almost all of my time on. When I was looking at that, I was able to create this research topic: how does the rapid spread of information through targeted algorithms contribute to the alt-right radicalization of youth on Instagram in the United States? I was able to put together my literature review with the help of wonderful research librarians here like Olivia Ivy, as well as obviously the great community AU has put together for us. And I broke that down to three general categories that all of my sources fell into: youth behavior online, the potential biases of different algorithms, and the road to alt-right radicalization. My hypothesis with this project was that in comparing youth users, those who self-identify as male will be more likely to have a higher frequency of recommended alt-right posts than those who self-identify as women. To sort of look into this project, I created 6 different Instagram accounts: 3 male, 3 female, all with the same names, birthdays, ages, same sort of thing. That way there was no issues there. I then broke it down further. I had a control group, 1 male, 1 female account, who liked no posts and searched nothing. I had 1 average test group, 1 male, 1 female account, who liked 3 posts a week from BBC News and searched the term health, recipes, and pop culture, because those are popular terms among all demographics. And finally, I had my extreme test group, 1 male and 1 female account, who liked 3 posts a week from Fox News and searched the terms Keck and Red Pill. Those are very popular alt-right terms currently, but they're also very popular gaming terms among our youth, which is why I thought it was important to look into them. You have your 14, 15-year-old younger brothers or cousins or nieces or nephews who are searching these terms. What I then did was I looked at the top 20 recommended posts each week for each account and categorized it into 7 different categories. I will note that the definition that I used for alt-right with this project was posts right-leaning that promoted supremacy, conspiracy theories, misinformation, male supremacy, and white nationalism. I got that from my faculty mentor, Dr. Brian Hughes, who works with our Violence and Extremism lab here. And then when looking at this data, I did obviously find some differences. As disheartening as that was, it made for very good research for me. Looking here, you do see a massive difference in the type of content that is recommended between male and female users at all 3 levels. The largest one, obviously, that I saw was the difference in right-leaning contents. That is the green section that you'll see pop up. that obviously our extreme male user had much more of than any other user. He had 6 times more right-leaning posts than any female user, including the one who took the exact same online actions. So these findings did support my hypothesis that our self-identifying male users are going to be promoted a lot different content, more alt-right, more frequency than our female-identifying users, which I hope I can bring into future research and future policy presentations, because I think this does offer really valuable insights into the mechanisms through which alt-right radicalization does occur. This is something we need to be looking at now, because our future leaders are the kids on Instagram today. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is our second place undergraduate research paper. Things that distinguish Catherine Greenstein's paper for the committee are the phenomenal number of sources she had to collect for her project and her engagement with in-depth primary research. The topic of her research was complex, involving the representation of 2 different groups of people, and she did a great job in explaining how the 2 groups were related. The fact that Catherine was able to pivot her project expectations according to the data that was available for her to collect shows her flexibility as a researcher. Catherine, please come up.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try really hard to condense this into 5 minutes. It was 87 pages and had 208 footnotes. So the title of my project was Intersecting Histories, a critical discourse analysis of AP US history textbook coverage of the Black Panther Party and the disability rights movement. That should tell you exactly how long my paper was. So the guiding questions and kind of what made me want to invest in this research was I saw battles across the country over so-called critical race theory in our textbooks, including in my own school district. Just months after I graduated from high school, we were in Time magazine for bullying our diversity, equity, and inclusion director out of their position. So I was mad. That was what made me write this paper. I was mad. But I asked the question to my research professor, Timothy Titus, are the textbooks in the status quo even good? Do minority communities, especially those who are multi-marginalized, get coverage at all? And is that coverage even good? Much less the kind that right-wing media are fear-mongering about. So that's what prompted my research. And then I spiraled. I met with people in the library, including Olivia Ivy, who suggested that I find these textbooks myself. So I called the College Board and I was like, hey, do you have samples of all of these textbooks that I can look at? I'm a researcher. They were like, no. And I was like, great. And so the next thing that I did was talk to the library and say, how can I get my hands on these books? Because they're really, really expensive and I don't have money. And so I ended up getting a hold of all of these books via the Interlibrary Loan Department at the library. So thank you, Interlibrary Loan Department. I got a hold of 13 out of the 20 approved textbooks. I was aiming for 5, so you guys are incredible. I chose AP and the College Board rather than just like any particular school district because AP is a standardized approval system rather than a state curriculum, and I wanted to make sure that this was something that would be applicable nationwide. And I originally had wanted to look at the intersection of the Black Panther Party and the disability rights movement at a very specific moment in time, which was the 504 sit-ins. This is one specific moment where the 2 groups intersected in a moment of collaboration, which is written about
out pretty much only in like oral history and autobiographies. And I was like, I'm sure it'll be in the textbooks. It was not. So I had to change plans and go with more of a case study format in how these two groups are covered separately. And the answer is badly. So the two textbooks, or sorry, all of the textbooks covered the two groups inappropriately with language not preferred by these two communities. They reinforce stereotypes like hypermasculinization, tropes of violence, and infantilization to take away credit from these organizations about all of the great work that they did. These authors are way out of touch with the communities that they're writing about. So what happens next? Much of this could be resolved in my conclusion, where I suggested that authors use more interdisciplinary and intersectional content in their books. And I suggested 5 things that I cannot go into much more depth about than just naming them because I am low on time. Oral history, journalism, auto and biographical material, material culture studies, and art history, some of which already exist in AP curriculum. And so I had made all of these suggestions because I think that it's true. Approaching learners from a variety of different angles means that we can approach learners in ways that make sense to them and that come from these communities in the way that they want to be talked about. So together, we can build a more educational and inclusive future. I'm going to my master's here at AU. I'm going to continue to use the library's resources. And I'm doing my master's of art in public history starting fall 2024. So I'm excited to keep using the library, especially for interlibrary loans. You guys are the best, and thank you so much. And I'm not going to forget that. Thank you guys so much.
You. Okay. The committee awards our first place for undergraduate research paper to Chaitanya Venkateshwaran. Chaitanya's paper was thoroughly researched, and she used an impressive variety of resources. The committee felt she raised her research project to another level by using an independent historical archive, which she identified through her library sources. Her personal reflection essay showed a great depth of learning and personal growth. The discoveries she made on her research journey proved to be transformative for her development as a scholar. As a result, Chaitanya demonstrated her ability to join and contribute significantly to a scholarly conversation. Chaitanya, please come forward.
Thank you so much, everyone. This is an absolute pleasure. As with some of the other award winners, I'm also graduating in about 10 days, and it is so surreal seeing Professor Kelly Joyner here, who taught me in my first year on Zoom in a writing studies class. So it really is all coming full circle for me. And of course, thank you to the library. You have served as a haven for me for the past 3 years that I've been on campus. I have spent many days and nights here using all of its resources. So it will always feel like part of my home to me at AU. My project was titled Moderates, Radicals, and the Making of Indian Anti-Colonial Narratives in Post-World War I United States. This is a very kind of niche part of American history that I wanted to focus on. And to kind of explain how I came around to studying this, I want to direct your attention to the sketch on screen. I'm hoping it's big enough for everyone to see. It shows a Indian laborer, emaciated, wearing nothing but a turban and loincloth, with a chain around his neck that he appears to have broken with his own 2 hands. The other end of the chain is being held by a stereotypically British man in top hat and tails. And underneath the sketch is the line, who would be free himself must blank, referring to Frederick Douglass's oft-cited quote, he who must be free himself must strike the first blow. This was from the April 1920 issue of the Young India magazine that was actually published out of Broadway, New York. And it was this intersection of India, colonization, the British, and America all in one frame that really drew me to this era of history where where India and Indian anti-colonialists were working in the United States to gather support from the American public for it. And my research question was, how is it possible that violence was simultaneously represented as barbaric and un-Indian, but also as a necessary tool for liberation amongst Indian anti-colonial publications in the United States, specifically between 1918 and 1920? Since this was my capstone research, much like Catherine's, went into a lot of detail with my library research and literature review, and I primarily want to draw your attention to kind of how I ended up using my library resources here. The interlibrary loan requests are a lifesaver when you're doing research into really niche areas of history, and there's like 5 books ever being written on it. So I was able to get my hands on some of those, and also, very interestingly enough, found someone from AU's history department who had graduated a few years ago with their PhD from here, who had done research on the same topic. And because the AU library and AU as a whole maintains a really good kind of record of all the papers, I was able to get a hold of that as well, and that proved to be invaluable to me. And it ended up forming the core of my literature review. When it came to my methodology, I adopted a post-structuralist discourse analysis. Discourse analysis is popular amongst those interested in studying history, but I primarily was able to find periodicals and pamphlets from that time period between 3 main organizations: the India Home Rule League of America, the Ghadar Party, and the Friends of Freedom for India. What was interesting here was that I was able to find it all through the South Asian American Digital Archive, which I stumbled upon as I was spending one of my summers here at AU working at a desk. It was like I was working a night shift. I was just scrolling through the library resource, and I was like, this looks interesting. And I fell into a rabbit hole and didn't come out for a year and a half. For me, primarily with methodology, the thing that really stood out to me was being able to access the SAGE research methods database through the AU library with their little blue books and little green books for qualitative and quantitative research, and the insight they were able to give me into that, since I had never done any kind of historical or archival research before. All of that helped me kind of form this coding structure. Won't go into too much detail about it, but please feel free to come up to me after. I will, talk your ear off about this. This is something I'm really interested in. And just a kind of sense of the kind of literature I was looking at. It was very interesting because I actually had to go through and essentially like hand code most of these, because it wasn't sources that I could like convert into PDF format and like use a like NVivo or some other more easily coding software in my process. But yeah, so I ended up kind of hand coding it through images. And my findings and analysis, I'll kind of wrap up after this, was essentially that there were ideological separations within the movement, even in the United States, even though it was a really small movement here. And within those ideological separations, you were able to see how Indians, or the Indian movement on one side was presented as nonviolent and painted the Europeans as the barbarians, kind of switching the narrative of the white man's burden and how violence was perceived at the time amongst colonizers and the colonized. I also saw a separation between how nationalists versus internationalists their approaches were, in terms of how moderate publications focused more on the colonial violence happening in India at the time in a more geographically confined manner, while more radical groups looked at it from a global perspective, looking at a more global idea of what colonialism and imperialism and colonial violence looks like. And finally, it was also in how they wrote about how Indians were responding to violence, whether they portrayed them as kind of more helpless natives, or having a more martial spirit and having the capacity for violence. And yeah, these are just some of the quotes I found associated with that, how different leaders portrayed it. For me, the most interesting one is the one on the right, where Irish President Eamon de Valera talked about how Ireland and India could collaborate on this movement, and actually talked about the British as the vampire that is fattening on our blood. Very stark representations there of the oppressor and the oppressed. And yeah, thank you so much for giving me this award and for taking the time to actually read my paper in the process.
Hello, everyone. I'm Katie Hutt. I'm the Business and Econ Librarian here at AU.
and it's my pleasure to present Isabella Long with the W. Donald Bowles Award. This award is endowed by Professor Emeritus Bowles, and it looks to champion research that reflects his interest in wealth inequality, poverty, and other topics that are related to the consequences of economic disparity. During our evaluation process, my fellow judges and I mentioned frequently that Isabella's paper, which looked at the health consequences of the lack of preventative care among undocumented populations and which policies we could best enact to ameliorate this, how much this paper really truly embodied the spirit of the Bowles Award. Isabella's recommendation from Professor Celeste Davis noted that Isabella's work showed a detailed understanding of health policy, systems, and advocacy. And then on the research side, one of the judges wrote that they were so impressed in both the paper and Isabella's reflection essay that Isabella was able to acknowledge where the process of research and writing led to rethinking their pre-existing ideals. And I think this aspect of learning through research is really one of the key things that we're looking for in the Student Research Awards, and I'm so pleased to present Isabella to discuss her paper. Congratulations.
So before I begin, I'm going to do something a little different. Instead of slides, I'm going to be practicing something that my professor is going to be grading me on soon, which is getting people to care about this. I'm going to be passing on some infographics that you guys can pass on. I don't think I have enough. I'm so sorry. I did not know there'd be so many people.
Bella, I knew you were going to do this.
Yeah?
I really knew.
That's great. So why am I doing this? Why am I passing along an infographic? I started this project knowing that I would be arguing for a population that would be heavily scrutinized. Speaking of changing my ideals, I'm a public health major and I'm writing for an econ paper. And for me, the answer was human rights. I mean, we give care because people deserve care. And it doesn't go much farther than that. And the research didn't lead me there. The research led me to countless articles and arguments arguing against the care of undocumented immigrants. And I did not know how I could make people care about something that people thought was just so logically false. And I really wanted to practice these skills. I have just started an econ minor, so I'm definitely a baby econ person. And I found myself spreading my research into the public health section, which for me was the most logical conclusion, and the economic. But as many who have read my paper agreed with, was the economic was the most convincing. And that was what I was the most happy to find, was all of those narratives that we have, that providing care would be too expensive, that we're providing care to people who are not contributing to our economy, that there's no point in doing this, was all false. What I found was that undocumented immigrants was the backbone of our economy, that the illness of this economy made detrimental economic impacts during the COVID-19 pandemic. I found so many disparities between different states. The most crazy part about this was tracking down each and every state who has used a Section 1115 waiver, which is a waiver that that is under the Medicaid program, in which you're able to use Medicaid-funded dollars to do an innovative program and kind of bend the rules of Medicaid. And one of those rules is citizenship. And with that, a few states have taken this option. What I decided to do was break it into the three main options, which is expanding it to maternal care, expanding it to the elderly, and then California, which I've noted on the infographic, who decided to expand it to everyone. what's so fun about this is, or I guess also difficult with my research, was that this changed every single week. Every single week there was a new article. And what that means is anyone who's ever done numbered references was that each time I found a new source, I had to go and put that source in there and renumber the rest of the sources in my entire paper. But it was worth it because each source was more and more convincing. California decided on January 1st to expand Medi-Cal, their Medicaid program, to all undocumented immigrants, regardless of age. That is huge. But going back to what was just mentioned is I had to change my ideals a bit. I couldn't make that recommendation. Unfortunately, looking at the evidence, it wasn't possible for many states like Colorado, like Massachusetts, Georgia, who are experiencing similar issues and fitting the same call to action. However, they lack the resources. So what did I have to do? I needed to come up with this new option, and my recommendation ended up being the expansion of Medicaid to all minors and all individuals under 40. Why 40? Kind of a random number. 40 is now the age recommended for most cancer screenings, including colon cancer and cervical cancer. This is very important, as if we wait too long, these individuals who are only able to access what's now called emergency Medicaid, which is only accessing care during emergency care, are accessing it when they're in stage 4, very late cancers, and there's nothing left for us to do. That is a story that does not need to occur. Screenings, as many people here know, are very easy. Some of the most basic screenings are very inexpensive for our economy. We don't spend that much on screenings. Preventative care is the most cheapest form of healthcare that we can have. Other countries know this. And in my recommendation, I noticed that if we put more of an emphasis on primary care, we're able to spend less money in emergency care. A little note on that emergency care, and picking a random state that will always stay in my mind. New York decided to expand their Medicaid because they were going to save $9 billion each year on emergency Medicaid, and instead spend $544 million on expanding Medicaid to their undocumented population. That's a crazy number. That could drastically reduce the homeless crisis in New York. That could drastically increase education outcomes in New York. And these are things that can be redone in other states. So I hope I did a pretty good job. This is also short, just like the assignment. I'm hoping that I got you all to care about this, just as I have.
The all-important bag. Well, I have the pleasure of being the last thing that stands between us and snacks, so I'll make it pretty brief. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to the students. These were excellent presentations, and please join me in one more round of applause. I know I'm walking out of here with a lot more information than I walked in here less than an hour ago, so thank you for all of you for not only taking the time to write the essays and apply for this award, but also prepare presentations at the end of the semester. Whew, and for showing up, I'm just nothing but undying gratitude to each one of you, and congratulations to those of you that are about to graduate as well. You're so close. More generally, I have a lot of people just to thank, starting with the committee chairs who presented the awards, Clarissa, Melissa, and Katie, as well as everyone else who served on the committees who evaluated these applications and took their jobs very seriously. I'd like to thank the comms team that helped put this award together and helped make sure that everything ran smoothly and that everything was passed out on time. To AV, who is here to record the event, thank you for attending. To G, for supporting this award, for presenting here, for making all of this possible and continuing to support amazing student research. Finally, she's not here today, but I did want to also thank one of our retiring colleagues, Mary Mintz. She started this award, and through lots and lots of dedication has made sure that it has continued. It is my honor to continue and keep that tradition alive. But we all have everything to thank for Mary for getting this all started. And with that, thank you all for attending. We have snacks out there, and it's also an excellent opportunity to talk with our research award winners more about their research.
Yeah, I always